Nurturing our gratitude for pluralism. So actually that book that I just talked about with the kids is the initiative for this message today. Jalinda gave it to me over a month ago, and I started looking at it to see what I thought of it for A Time for All Ages. And the story is pretty much how it unfolded, that it gets eventually into this classroom where the teacher says we get to vote between a cookie factory and the nature preserve. But there's a part I left out for the kids. That you turn the page and the teacher said, all right, class, right now the vote is 50% for each. It's an even tie and there's one vote left. And immediately my thoughts went to, the teacher's rigging the election. She wants to go to the nature preserve and she's throwing her own vote in there. I can't believe this. And then I sat back and thought, Jim, you need to get a grip on yourself. This is a children's book to teach them about elections. And I thought, this is what our society has done to me. This is what the media has done. Because over and over again, it's talking about elections are being unfair, they're being rigged, the gerrymandering that's going on. That's where my mind went first. Is pretty pathetic. By the way, the nature preserve won, and they had a really good time. Is the end of the book. But anyway, it started me thinking about, well, I wanted to, this month's theme is nurturing gratitude. And I didn't want to do the typical, let's have 30 days of gratitude, let's have a list together for Thanksgiving dinner and say what we're grateful for, which is all fabulous, but you've heard that a million times. I thought we've got to do something a little bit different. And then just looking at that book and my reaction made me realize that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do some gratitude for voting, for democracy. I mean, after all, fair voting is an essential part of our functioning democracy. And democracy, even with all of its foibles that are pretty well known, it's still the best system that we know for maintaining a pluralistic society. I mean, think about it. What else in our society does that high a percentage of the population have the legal right to participate in? And in some presidential elections, you get up to the 70% turnout, which for our country is a fabulous thing. So I can't think of anything that's more pluralistic in our society. So I chose my title today, Nurturing Gratitude for Pluralism, for this reason. For at least in my lifetime, we've completely taken a pluralistic society for granted, I think. The same weekend I was looking at this book is the same weekend as the No Kings rally, the most recent one. Now, of course, these are demonstrations against autocratic rule, where one person representing a specific segment of society gets to have everything their way. And in its most extreme form, if you think of Stalin's Russia or Mao's China, you can get any kind of pluralism completely ceasing to exist. So today, here's the challenge. I want us to consider what it means to nurture a deeper gratitude for pluralism, specifically our mostly functioning democracy. Now, the reason I chose the word pluralism is you just refresh your brain a little bit. You can look on the back wall there up here down here in Fond du Lac. Pluralism is one of our new Unitarian Universalist shared values. In our principles, we always said that we lift up the process of democracy and democratic principles. That's still in there. They just raise the level of what we talk about to a value that democracy is a part of. So it's pluralism. In fact, the UU shared values, it states like this. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. That's beautiful. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. So then I sat back and think, wait a minute, there's two we's in there. So who are the we's that those pronouns are referring to? Well, the first one, we celebrate, I think is kind of obvious. It's the Unitarian Universalist congregations. In case you don't know, the formal name of our denomination is the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations. And for 5 years, we worked on these values. They did all kinds of focus groups and all kinds of studies, and then rolled it up to a set of values that they thought summarized everything quite nicely, and we had to vote on it twice in two General Assemblies a year apart. And so this is an example of the democratic principle. And our values in this denomination, it's not a creed. You know that we're a non-creedal faith. You don't have to say, I believe in this, that, and the other thing to belong here. But these are actually in our bylaws, believe it or not. Our values are written in our bylaws because it's a way to signify to the world, what does it take to be a member here? It means that you at least celebrate and uphold these values. It's also for the outside world to look in and read our governing bylaws so they get who we are. So that makes sense. So we celebrate this. But then the next one is that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. So that's the one that puzzled me. Is it we, as in all of you here in this room and all of you out on Zoom and up in Green Bay, that we all believe that we are sacred beings? I think we all do. We like to be diverse in culture. We'd like to be more diverse in culture than we are, but we accept diversity. We are certainly diverse in experience, and certainly diverse in our theology within a liberal religious context, of course. So that makes sense that it's we right here in front of me. But you also know that we are a people of this world. We are not separate from this world. We are out in the world, and we always carry our values with us into the world because we honestly hope for and believe that moral arc of the universe will ultimately bend towards justice, and we're here to tweak it a little bit all the time. So if we apply those same values that everybody out there is sacred being, diverse in culture, experience, and theology, that gets into a different area. That gets into voting. It gets into democracy and pluralism. Which led me to the reading today, The Paradox of Noise, which I kind of dubbed in my head the paradox of pluralism, especially that one middle phrase she had. Our minds do not like paradoxes. We want things to be clear so we can maintain our illusions of safety. Certainty breeds tremendous smugness. And I'm sorry, but UUs can be rather smug sometimes, particularly because we're very proud of our values and we think we've got it right and the rest of the world doesn't. And so we go out there with a little bit of smugness that makes us feel secure about our illusions, but that's not pluralism. Pluralism is a paradox. My key message today is to really talk about this extreme polarization that's in our country. That's nothing new. If you've been paying attention at all for the last 10, 20 years, you're very familiar with it. And it makes the fact that that makes celebrating pluralism quite challenging. I found two quotes, they're short readings actually, that I wanted to share with you that I think bring the point home. The first one's by Samuel Cronin. He's an essayist and author of the free Substack Alien Nation here podcast kind of thing. Basically, he writes about what it means to be human and what's the meaning of our suffering. Now, he had 4 statements here, 3 of which you're going to go, got it, but the 4th one blew me away. So first, Democrats and Republicans are engaging with each other less often, and we frequent separate social circles and media channels, which makes us susceptible to pigeonholing our presumed enemies and stoking the flames of discord. How many speakers have you had up here where we're talking about how can you have those difficult conversations, right? I think we all would agree that that's happening. The second one, this phenomenon is evidenced by the growing taboo against marriage between opposing members of political parties and the fact that Democrats and Republicans are becoming less inclined to live near each other. Now, maybe that's not quite so obvious or visible, but I've heard of it. The third one, many people from both sides of the spectrum report finding it stressful to talk politics with someone from the other side. Oh yeah, got an oh yeah here, Green Bay. Now the last one. Even more telling, a nationally representative study found that 20% of Republicans and 15% of Democrats say the country would be better off if large swaths of the other party just flat out died. Ouch. The other quote comes from an interview with Liliana Mason by Judy Woodruff. This is from the Judy Woodruff Presents America at a Crossroads, PBS NewsHour. Interview with Liliana Mason. She's a professor of political science at Johns Hopkins University and author of the book Uncivil Agreement. Little background before I get to the point that was highlighted. They were spending time talking about a brief summary of our 250-year history of democracy and how sometimes everybody sort of agreed and other times they didn't quite so much. And they kind of got to the 1950s, specifically the election of Dwight D. Eisenhower for president. So if you don't remember your history, Dwight D. Eisenhower was a very, very popular general during World War II. And when the war was over and came back to the US, things settled down, wanted or was encouraged to run for president, and honestly sat and thought about which party to run in. Because at that time, in 1950, the two parties were so similar that most voters had no idea really what the differences were and didn't really care which one they voted for. In fact, the pundits at the time were saying and recommending that the politicians and the political parties start being more aggressive, making a more aggressive stance, something that was clearly opposite the other party so that everybody could figure out which was which more easily. So that's where these quotes come in. Mason says, and ultimately, what ended up happening is that our society changed in such a way that our parties started becoming different on their own, not based on policy preferences, or not only based on policy preferences, but based on what Democrats and Republicans looked like. What kind of religious services they attended, what kind of cultural TV shows they watched, where they lived. And so they started really becoming different from each other in a social way, not just in a sort of policy way. So then Woodruff interjects here. Liliana Mason argues that this stacking of identities on top of one another into what she calls a mega-identity has reinforced our basic human instinct for inclusion and exclusion, and that helps explain the tribal politics we see today. Back to Mason. Not that we have never had partisan animosity. The difference is that now, because our sort of progress in terms of civil rights, not just for Black Americans, but for all Americans who have previously been marginalized, including women, is that we have associated the two parties with different sides of that story. Essentially, the left is now taking the position of we want a fully egalitarian, pluralistic, multi-ethnic democracy. And what Trump has been saying, make America great again, is the definition of going back in time. And so there is this conflict between, do you want to move forward or do we want to move backward? That means that every time we have an election, it is basically a status competition. Rather than it's just being our party that wins or loses, now it feels like our racial group, our religious group, our cultural group is also winning or losing. So that makes the stakes feel a lot higher to us on a psychological level. So, with these very dire assessments of our society's ability to maintain pluralism, I want to bring us back to my challenge this month, to nurture deep gratitude for pluralism. Honestly, we're going to struggle with this one. Yes, I'm sure we absolutely want a fully egalitarian, pluralistic, multi-ethnic democracy, but we can never ever have this without the part of pluralism we can't stomach. It all comes as one big messy package. If we're going to have deep gratitude for pluralism, and be truly grateful for pluralism, and that we live in such a, let me just back up. If we're going to have deep gratitude for pluralism, be truly grateful for pluralism, and be grateful that we live in a truly pluralistic country, it means that we have to stop thinking in terms of moving forward or going backward socially or politically, at least in absolute terms. Rather, pluralism requires us to move beyond the fear of such an existential threat and recognize the humanity and struggles of our co-citizens, especially those with which we don't agree. How do we truly celebrate or nurture gratitude for pluralism if almost a third of our population would prefer the other side didn't even exist? Pluralism is very important, and we must help bridge the gap. Frankly, I feel like this is our calling. We believe in pluralism. We have it in our values, for heaven's sakes, and I think we try our best to do it within these walls. So we've had more practice than probably most groups in our society in doing this. So I think this is our calling. We must resist the temptation for smugness or panic. And again, we can do this because supposedly we celebrate pluralism. So let us engage with our society, always remembering or reminding everyone that pluralism and democracy really do come first. We will never get that utopia maybe in our lifetime, but because of us, our like-minded partners out there, I do believe we will resist autocracy by authentically celebrating pluralism. Amen. Let's take a moment of silence.